microphone on. It will help, won't it? If that's the only mistake I make this evening, I'll be very happy. Welcome to this evening's meeting of the Planning Committee. I am Councillor Ellis Brown and I will be chairing this evening's meeting. I shall be supported by the Vice Chair, Councillor Van der Boer, and the professional officers. Thank you for attending. May I remind members of the public that this is not a public meeting, but a meeting at which the public are present. Therefore, it is not a forum for the public to ask questions or challenge the points raised during debate by officers or members of the committee. You must not engage with members or call out during the meeting. Thank you. If you have requested to speak, when invited to do so, please keep to your allotted time, and your comments must be material in planning terms to the decision that is being considered by the committee. We are not expecting a fire drill today, so should you hear the alarm, please make your way to the nearest fire exit, which is in the far corner there, and this one over my left there. And we congregate, rather fortunately, outside the Lind Cross Public House. May I also ask council members and members of the public, please switch off your mobile phones or turn them to silent, and remember to turn on your microphones before speaking and turn them off when you have finished. I will also remind everyone here, please show respect to each other throughout the meeting. When members are voting, make sure your arm is clearly raised so that we can capture an accurate vote. And before we proceed, could the officers here this evening please introduce themselves, starting with the officers on my right.
Thank you, Chair. Robert Hermitage, Principal Planning Officer.
Good evening, Emma Parks, Head of Development and Building Control.
Good evening, Claire Brown, Principal Planning Solicitor.
Melissa Stallard, Democratic Services Officer.
Thank you very much. Apologies for absence. Do we have apologies for absence, please?
Yeah. So we have apologies from Councillor Mike Croker. Councillor John Campbell is substituting for him. Apologies from Councillor Anthony Franklin, and we have Councillor Joanne Knowles substituting. And we have apologies from Councillor Roger Knoll, and we have Councillor Richard Bandiu substituting.
Thank you very much. Declarations of members' interests. Councillor Trollope, then I'll come to Councillor Greg.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, on DC 24040848, I know the applicants and have known them for many years, so I shall be recusing myself from the debate.
Thank you. Councillor Greg.
Thank you. DC 241292 is in my ward.
Thank you. There's been some confusion over that, I understand. But thank you very much. Appeals, any comments on appeals? No? Okay. Announcements from the chair. We've gone a slightly off cue there, but never mind. I remind ward members that if the application under consideration is within your ward, you may comment but will not vote. This means that Councillor Grech, Councillor Blackburn and Councillor Landeroo will not be voting on certain applications we'll be discussing this evening. Thank you. Moving on to the first item, which is item number 5, which is DC 240848, land to the west of White's Copse, Horsham Road, Roehook. Rudgwick, please could the officers make the presentation to the committee? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just by way of verbal update to the committee, a letter from the applicant and agent was sent to and addressed to committee members yesterday. This letter has been published on the Council's register. The letter seeks to highlight some key points and assist members in their decision making tonight. Officers appreciate that this is the applicant's reported 13th attempt to secure a site for this use. However, this is not reason standalone to suggest that the site in particular is an exception to the core policy conflicts as identified in the officer's report. In addition, 2 applications are cited as examples for similar development approved within the district. Firstly, DC 17-2886 at Upper Bottle Farm, which was granted outline consent in 2018 and reserved matters in 2024. However, this application site specifically operated as an existing childcare site since approximately 2015 and grew to a point where expansion was necessary. On these grounds, the intensification of the use was considered acceptable. The second application, DC 13-1492, Pear Tree Farm, is also cited. Note that this application was submitted and determined prior to the adoption of the HDPF and under the first version of the NPPF. Therefore, material circumstances surrounding planning matters would be substantially different. In addition, in this use, the proposal was considered as a genuine diversification as an agricultural site, for which is further supported by subsequent application to expand the agricultural enterprises on the site. Officers therefore consider that given the material circumstances cited to those applications and the application before the committee tonight, these particular cases do not establish a precedent. Further commentary was also provided regarding the second reason for refusal, noting a divergence in opinion between the council's arboricultural officer and the applicant's arboricultural advisor. However, members should note that paragraph 193C of the NPPF is crystal clear in terms of harm being outweighed in exceptional circumstances. Regardless of a differing of opinion, this does not overcome the clear provisions of the framework. In addition, commentary was also given regarding the third and fourth reasons for refusal. Whilst the contents of this letter are noted, this information is not before the council and therefore cannot be considered. The site is shown on the slide here in red, within a highly rural context, a short distance north of the unclassified hamlet of Rohook and to the east of Rohook Road. The site is not found within or adjacent to an existing built-up area boundary, with all classified settlements found at some distance from the site, the closest being Rudrick, some 2.9 kilometres from the site. The site is not allocated within an existing or emerging development plan for any form of development and constitutes a countryside location in policy terms. The site is not considered well related to any existing active travel or public transport infrastructure, with none present in the near vicinity of the site. As discussed within the officer's report, it is not considered that the location is sustainably located, justified as a consequence of non-availability of alternative sites, or that the proposed development represents an essential form of development in the countryside in conflict with HDPF policies 10, 26, 40 and 43. The site comprises a single field east of Rohook Road, the roadside asset, visibility space from the proposed access, and a small section of ancient woodland to the east of the main field, which corresponds to the provision of drainage pipe outfall. Nearby constraints include the designated ancient woodland of White's Copse, which adjoins the site to the east and north of the Grade 2 listed building of Little Millfields to the southwest of the site opposite Rohook Road. A small number of dwellings are found within the vicinity of the site, including Millfields Cottage, Little Millfields and Mill Bay, found either opposite on Rohook Road or a short distance south of the site. No public rights-of-way run through or adjacent the site, with the closest public right-of-way being number 1411 at approximately 185 metres southeast of the site. In addition, the site is constrained within the designated mineral safeguarding area for brick clay, which extends to the majority of the district, and a small part of the site additionally modelled at risk of surface water flooding. Planning permission is sought for a mixed use of the land comprising an agricultural purpose and as a nursery/forest school. The submitted planning statement indicates that the expected attendance of 46 children and 12 full-time employed members of staff. In conjunction with the proposed use of the land, the proposal seeks to provide a nursery building, together with various formal and informal play facilities, an allotment space, a wood workshop, and parking and access off of Rohook Road. The proposals additionally seek the retention of various existing agricultural structures and animal enclosures present on the land, with the existing and proposed built facilities clustered within the southern section of the site. The photographs shown on the slide here show the existing site's western boundary looking north and looking northeast, and here looking east and southeast with the existing structures, which are the field shelters and cages, etc., which are also currently present on the land. These are all lightweight structures of a typical build to an agricultural smallholding. Here the photos show the southern boundary looking east and west on the western boundary to the field looking north, which is the ancient woodland, which is dense and well established. And here the western boundary to the field looking north and the existing parking area with the open-sided stores. This photo notes the depth of the woodland and distance to Millfield Cottage in general. No unacceptable effects on to Millfield Cottage or other occupiers nearby the site are considered to result from the proposals. Photo showing the existing field access, which is to be widened and reorientated to accommodate the new 4.8 metre wide access to the site. This slide shows the southwards visibility. The trees closest to the road on the left are to be removed in order to accommodate a southwards visibility display, which informs the officers' concerns regarding the absence of adequate survey to establish resultant ecological effects. The photo on the bottom showing the northwards visibility. This slide shows the expected views into the site from Rowhook Road to the south of the proposed access. The main car park would be situated behind the existing tree line where views are limited by the depth and presence of existing vegetation. View of the site to the north of the proposed access are also demonstrating the limited nature of the existing views. This slide shows the sections through the site. Note the fallen levels to the east of Rowhook Road and the main built facilities, i.e. the nursery and polytunnels, etc., which are situated at a lesser elevation than the highway. The main nursery building is shown here. This is understood to be provided as a prefabricated porta cabin-like structure clad in timber, which is considered by officers to be a simple and generally unassuming design. In relation to matters of landscape and visual effect, it is considered that proposal would result in urbanising effects detrimental to the rural character and condition of the site and its surroundings. Those effects, however, would be largely contained by the retained trees and woodland and are considered localised to the immediate site surroundings. While, therefore, a degree of landscape visual harm is considered to result from the proposals, the scale of the harm is considered minor and insufficient to warrant an objection. The proposed development would be accessed via a priority T-junction leading to the east of Rowhook Road. Relative to the existing access, the proposed access would be repositioned slightly southwards and widened to a width of 4.8 metres so that two cars could simultaneously enter and exit. In arboricultural terms, subject to the receipt of additional detail such as construction methods, as requested by the Council's arboricultural officer, these works are deemed unobjectionable. Updated ecological surveys, however, have not been conducted to ascertain the likely ecological effects and the scale of any effects, which might be derived from the part removal of the group G1 trees. Neither has the statutory B&G metric been updated to reflect this component of the proposals. These circumstances inform the third and fourth reasons for refusal. The proposals were amended in March 2025 to include additional land to the east of the main field, reflecting the installation of a drainage pipe and outfall which connects to the existing stream. These works are extended into the designated ancient woodland. As a result, as can be seen on the updated tree survey, the proposed draining works involve the operations within the modelled root protection area of a large number of existing trees. The Council is not satisfied that the measures detailed in the submitted arboricultural assessment, including the moulding of the pipework, non-use of machinery and positioning of the outfall outside of any individual root protection areas, are necessarily achievable given the length of drainage run, or would otherwise prove sufficient to avoid harm to the existing trees. The drainage proposals, in any event, would impact on undergrowth, soils and mycelial networks, even if harm to root structures could be avoided. In the view of the Council's arboricultural officer and ecologist, these works are likely to result in the deterioration of the ancient woodland, which is an irreplaceable habitat. As a result, in the officer's report, it is noted that it is not considered that the deterioration of the ancient woodland is unavoidable, or that the exception test has been completely satisfied in this instance. Proposals, therefore, are considered to conflict with paragraph 193C of the National Planning Policy Framework. This attracts significant weight against the grant of a planning permission and informs the second reason for refusal. Paragraph 85 of the NPPF confirms that significant weight should be placed upon the development which supports economic growth and productivity and which creates conditions within which businesses can invest, expand and adapt. In these respects, the economic benefits of the proposed development. Paragraph 100 of the framework specifically recognises the importance of early years places and confirms that planning decisions should give great weight to the need and create and expand early years places. Paragraph 88 and 89 of the framework do both recognise that there are circumstances in which a in which commercial and community development may have to may have to be located beyond existing settlements, and do not assume that such development should be located within isolated and unsustainable locations. Instead, both provisions confirm that planning decisions should otherwise allow for development accessible services, such as paragraph 88, and encourage that sites are physically and well related to the existing settlements, paragraph 89. No compelling justification has been given to the selection of the site for the proposed development specifically, or to establish that in the absence of alternative sites which do not have the same sustainability concerns. The proposals therefore are considered to conflict with paragraphs 88 and 89 of the framework. Paragraphs 110 of the framework and policy 40 of the HCPF otherwise operate in a manner which seek to ensure that development is sustainably located. Paragraph 193C of the framework confirms that development resulting in the loss or deterioration of ancient woodland should be refused unless there are wholly exceptional reasons and a suitable compensation strategy exists. Paragraph 193 should be noted as unqualified. Any degree of loss or deterioration should be refused in the absence of wholly exceptional reasons and suitable compensation. Footnote 70, shown at the bottom there, to paragraph 193, affords some indication of what includes an exceptional reason. This includes nationally significant infrastructure projects. The indication, therefore, is that the scale of the public benefit should prove significant, such as to clearly outweigh the deterioration of a habitat. As per section 7 of the committee report, officers recommend to members that the application is refused on the grounds that the principal development is not acceptable, adverse impacts on the ancient woodland, arboricultural considerations, and that the biodiversity net gain metric has not been accurately completed. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We now call the first public speaker, Megan Thomas, please.
Who wants to go first?
Sorry, Chairman, do you mind if I go first?
Assuming that you're Tim Dawes.
I am.
It's okay.
Is that okay?
Okay, and you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. My name is Tim Dawes of Planet Consulting, and I represent the Roehook Communities Association, who represent the 89 residents of Roehook. We welcome and support the recommendation to refuse this change of use application. The case officer makes the point between an urban and countryside location and correctly reaches the conclusion that there is no overriding need for this use to happen in a remote countryside location. Linked to this, we note this is in a completely unsustainable site that would be dependent on the use of a car minibus. We agree with both these points. We don't agree that there is a proven need for a forest school such as this and would have expected a comprehensive detailed report, potentially penned by an educational specialist setting out the early years situation across the county and then showing the need for more places, supported by county council data. Ultimately, there would clearly be other sites or land that are closer to settlement areas and in far more sustainable positions than here. Turning to more technical matters, we offer the following considerations. By extending the red line to incorporate a drainage solution, this has caused multiple issues. Briefly, these are strong objections raised by the council's tree officer and BNG officer to the applicant's drainage strategy and 70-metre run of new drainage channel by virtue of the unknown harm to multiple ancient woodland trees, 17 trees identified, which is not insignificant. Concern has also been raised to the proposed 600mm depth from a moulling device and the unknown impacts to the trees and their root protection areas. There's further arboricultural concern about the impact of trees adjacent to widened access and inevitable trenching for vital services. The internal landscape officer and case officer considered the overall design to be sympathetic and the impacts to be minor. We don't accept this summary and consider that the combined build, hard areas, inevitable lighting, security and fencing would transform this land from a rural open area to an urbanised oasis. Objections are raised to the lack of ecological surveys in relation to the partial felling of the group G1 trees to facilitate visibility displays. We remain highly sceptical about the way water has been addressed as part of the project to try and overcome water neutrality issues. Reliance on bringing portable water to the site combined with waterless WCs is simply unrealistic and implausible for early years use. We also feel the impact on residents has been underplayed. We've all walked past schools, and with almost 50 pupils and heavily reliant on being outdoors, we think there would be a noticeable impact on residents and certainly greater than has been suggested in the published committee report. Turning to drainage, it should immediately be noted by members of the committee that West Sussex County Council Lead Flood Authority, a statutory consultee, has objected to the amended scheme and raises 6 points in the most recent response. We find it odd that these matters have not been made into a fifth reason for refusal, as they are serious matters and questions raised by a statutory consultee, and we feel it would be an oversight for them not to also form part of the reason for refusal. Overall, we agree with the case officer that when you undertake the planning balance, the harm associated with the scheme clearly outweighs the respective benefits of a forest school located here. Further, there are several technical matters around drainage, ecology and impact on ancient woodland trees that have not been properly or fully addressed. We urge committee members to support the officer's recommendation to refuse this planning application. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you very much. Okay, Megan Thomas, please. And you two have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, councillors. I'm Megan Thomas KC, a specialist planning barrister, and I also represent the 89 residents of Roehook Community Association. The essential points to make are these. The application is clearly contrary to your adopted development plan in an isolated countryside location without any evidence need for it to be there. You may have sympathy with parents calling for more early years childcare places, but that shouldn't pressure you into granting planning permission for outdoor-based schools in remote locations. Your officer has correctly said that the outdoor activities which this nursery intends to offer can be offered from a site within or on the edge of a settlement. We agree. The Gaskins Lodge website, that's the facility run by the applicants, says that they run a genuine forest school now from the lodge in Rudgwick by minibusing children to amenity sites, including the application site. So forest schools are clearly run from locations within existing settlements, including within Horsham, according to your officer. The most recent letter from the applicant's agent refers to you granting forest schools or nurseries in the countryside in the past, but in fact, one was to be run from temporary structures only, and one was partly in the curtilage of an existing house anyway, so not in open countryside. So for those reasons, they're not precedents, and also for the reasons that your officer just now explained in his presentation. I'd also like to emphasise that visually the site will become very urbanised. Trees need to be felled. There'll be a tarmacked access, extensive fencing, lighting, hard-standing outdoor play apparatus, a car park, polytunnels, a workshop building, an educational building. On a weekday, 208 car trips, about 46 children. This won't be a discrete development. Next, the application is mainly for Class E use. You will know that's the widest use class and allows an operator to flip to other uses without needing planning permission. So it could be flipped to any commercial, business or service use, a restaurant, a cafe, offices, or even light industrial. It's surprising that the applicants didn't apply for Class F1A use, which is used for the provision of education. Finally, for the drainage scheme to work, a drain has to be inserted into the ancient woodland to reach a ditch. Entire trees in this woodland may well be lost. Soils inevitably will be disturbed. This in reality is a showstopper. Ancient woodland, even if consisting of replanted trees and its ancient soils, have almost the highest protection in the planning almanac. The habitat is classed as irreplaceable. And even at this late stage, no net gain in biodiversity has been proven. A deferral on the basis of providing further information should be firmly rejected.
Could you conclude
Yes.
your points, please?
A deferral on the basis of providing further information should be firmly rejected. They have had 10 months to provide additional information. It's just the wrong site. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Sam Eachus, please. You two have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Chair, members of the committee, thank you for the opportunity to speak on behalf of the applicants. While some local concern has been raised, this relates primarily to highways, where there is no technical objection. There are also no objections on matters of landscape, design, noise, amenity, or water neutrality. We have submitted further information to address drainage concerns, though unfortunately this was not accepted in time for this meeting. Crucially, this does not form a reason for refusal. Turning to the 4 reasons cited. First, on location. The use of rural sites for forest schools has been accepted by Horsham District Council in previous applications, as set out in the planning statement. We would not have pursued this proposal had we not found precedents supporting the principle of forest schools in settings such as the application site. The council themselves have previously confirmed that the Montessori-style education model, like that of Jack and Jill's, cannot be effectively delivered from an urban site. Furthermore, the existing livestock and proposed horticulture further justify this rural setting. This business model is inherently outdoor-based and cannot function from a town location. Second, ancient woodland. The proposed drainage affects a replanted area with no trees older than 20 years, and with many suffering from ash dieback. Our arboriculturalist, in recent correspondence with myself, has confirmed that clay soils restrict growth to the top 300 millimetres of soil, well above the proposed moulling depth. And based on first-hand experience working with moulling contractors, the works can be completed using hand tools, together with a compressor placed outside the woodland. A single entry and exit pit is proposed in the woodland. It avoids root protection areas, and the soil will be reinstated in the order that it came out. The resulting ecological impacts are said to be negligible. Furthermore, younger trees are far less sensitive to such limited disturbance. Despite a proposed 30% BNG uplift, woodland creation and protection of the 15-metre buffer, the drainage impact has not been fairly assessed. Mitigation is proposed despite the comments in the officer's report, and we ask that this be reconsidered through further information. Ultimately, ecological enhancement and protection is at the heart of this proposal. On the third reason, protected species, a bat survey completed last week confirms that no roosts are present in the trees to be removed along the visibility splay. Accordingly, this reason can also be wholly addressed. Finally, biodiversity net gain. The BNG metric is being updated to reflect the comments of the BNG officer. While they have requested further information, these are technical matters, all capable of resolution through additional information and conditions. Given the recent changes to the MPPF requiring childcare to be given great weight in the planning balance, the public and economic benefit...
Could you bring to conclusion,
a couple
please?
of lines left. The public and economic benefits of the scheme and the fact that the concerns are either addressed or resolvable, we respectfully request deferral to allow the submission of the necessary ecological information. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, Brian Jackson Robson, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
I would like to thank all the consultees, officers and committee members for their time. Tonya and I have over 33 years of combined experience in childcare. We run a small local business supporting families in our community of Rudgwick. At Jack and Jill's, which has been proudly operating for 22 years, we are more than just a childcare setting. We are a small local business dedicated to supporting the families in our community. Both Tonya and I come from large families and backgrounds deeply rooted in the natural world. Tonya's family run a farm in the Cotswolds, whereas mine is firmly entrenched in a family dedicated to cultivating our own fruit and vegetables. Our waiting list is 2 years long, and many parents worry about securing a place for their child even before they're born. When potential customers see our vision, they are always impressed and eager to join us. One parent recently informed us of praise from a parent whose young child goes to a nearby private school nursery. Although this individual's child has not attended our setting, they told her that they wished their child had come to our setting, citing our outstanding reputation and our dedication to educating children in a natural environment. We often hear accolades that are similar. We've embraced Forest School as a way of life. focusing on teaching future generations about caring for our natural world. Our dream is to create a space like no other, a truly natural environment where children can learn and grow. And unlike urban settings with artificial services and limited outdoor play areas and irregular visits to a woodland site which needs planning permission in its own right, our Roehook site is a wonderland for exploring nature. Our vision includes not only a forest school, but also a farm school and a food forest. We will teach children about nature throughout all seasons with a heartfelt and thoughtfully planned design. Sustainability and a low-impact approach are essential to us, and we aim for over 30% BNG. After 11 years and 12 attempts to expand, including local farmers and Rudwick Parish Council owned land, we found the perfect site. It's beautifully secluded thanks to sympathetic, sensitive design in collaboration with landscape and ecology professionals. We're committed to showing children that working with nature benefits everyone. Our commitment to the environment is at the heart of this endeavour. We plan to implement a range of sustainable practices from building with eco-friendly materials to fostering a culture of respect for nature among the children. This approach not only benefits the planet but also instills important values in our future generations. Sir David Attenborough has quoted, "If children do not grow up knowing about nature and appreciating it, they will not understand it. And if they do not understand it, they will not protect it. And if they do not protect it, who will?" For local families, this nursery and forest school means more than just childcare. It's a place where children can delve into the wonders around them, unlocking creativity and fostering a profound connection to the world. It's an investment in our children's overall well-being and in the community's future. And we will be adding more job opportunities in our local area as well.
Thank you very much. Leona Bungay, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak today. My name is Leona and my daughter has been attending Jack and Jill's for the past 2 years. I come from a farm park background. Farm parks were created by farmers diversifying and opening up their land to families because they saw the sheer amount of children who thought that milk came from bottles and meat comes from supermarkets. As a parent, I would love to be able to take my daughter to these places, but their running costs are high, meaning their entrance fees are high, and that unfortunately is unaffordable for us to visit regularly. And this is where we feel the Forest School is bridging that gap. When we first started to look at childcare, we knew a forest school was something that we wanted. We only found a few places offering this, and when we went to visit, we were shocked at the lack of outdoor space that they have. Some just a small patch of grass, and this is not what we had in mind. We were very fortunate to get a space for Lily at Jack and Jill's, and she is thriving. Many of our friends have their children in regular nurseries but are unhappy with the amount of time they spend inside and often complain about the amount of illness that comes from that. Whilst this is not nice for the children, it also impacts our finances. When our children are poorly, we pay for them to stay at home, and for me being self-employed, if I can't go to work, I don't get paid. Our friends have been looking into getting their children into forest schools locally but have found there are no spaces available until the end of 2026. As a family, we get out and about a lot, but we could never be able to do the sheer amount of things that she does at Forest. We don't have the kit at home or the knowledge. The continuous development we see in her confidence, ability, language, social skills, and love for being outside is amazing. She comes home smiling and tired, but still wants to go outside to water the flowers that we're growing in our own garden. We have seen firsthand that Jack and Jill's is clearly not just a business for Brian and Tonya. The passion they show not only with the children, but also their strive to create a better forest school for more children, creating jobs and in a sustainable way is brilliant. We are surprised to hear that it's been recommended that they find an urban setting. We don't live in a busy area, which means we would need to travel to an already busy area during rush hour to make that situation worse, as well as the extra time and emissions that this would cause. The children would then be transported to the outdoor setting, causing more emissions and less time for them to be able to do their activities. I agree it's great to have childcare options in urban areas, especially for those who don't drive, but a forest school really needs to be in a countryside setting. Forest schools like Jack and Jill's are few and far between, and we feel very, very lucky to have such a fantastic facility on our doorstep, run by people who really care. They are a small family-run business, and it would be great to see the community give them the support that they truly deserve and the support for the learning experiences of our children. Thank you.
Thank you. You want to come back? Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Members, just to come back on a few points that have been raised. Obviously, we've already given a presentation on the content of the letter regarding to the location, the impact on the ancient woodland and protected species. So we've already made our case clear with that. In terms of the objectors raising concerns about the drainage, the officers do note that the LFA, so the local flood authority, has raised an objection on those grounds, but as set out in the report, we consider that is not entirely insurmountable by way of condition. As for the use class coming under a Class E, I mean, if it was to be the case that permission were to be granted, then a condition could be included on the decision to avoid any jumps between use classes. In terms of whether or not this is a premature status to be determining the application, as has been presented already, the application was first made in August 2024. Such time that the application has been with the council for a significant period of time. The applicant has been afforded extensive opportunity to make further submissions to address the officer and consultee concerns, but the discretion to delay the determination is not unfettered. The intention, as agreed with the applicant, was to allow amendments to be received in March in the anticipation of a referral to the May committee, but this was not achieved, but that does not mean that a decision should be delayed any further. If further documents are received, it doesn't necessarily follow that these will be considered acceptable, and it's unlikely to overcome the council's concern in respects of the principle of development in any case. The applicant wouldn't be prevented from submitting further technical documents in the support of an appeal, which would provide a platform for the council to reconsider its position as necessary, and for further comments to be made.
Thank you. Richard Landeroux, Ward Councillor, and you have 5 minutes. Councillor Landeroux.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yes, I am the Ward Councillor, and as such, while I'll be speaking, obviously I can't vote on this. I've every sympathy for the applicant on what they want to do. I think it's very laudable and needed. But having read the officer's report, looked at everything that's been online in terms of the fors and against, in my opinion, I'm supporting the officer for refusal. If I was going to go for approval, I would find it very hard, I think, to counter the 4 reasons that the officer has come up with. I'd like to thank the officer as well for his rather long and painstaking review of this application. A lot of the things that we are aiming to do as a council in terms of climate change, biodiversity and active travel are totally outside of this application. The word remote comes up very many times in this application or in the officer's report, and it is very remote. I don't know how many of our members tonight know much about Roehook or if they've ever been there. It is just a small hamlet. The only facility they've got there is the very excellent Checkers pub. Why do I say that? But there is nothing else. It's a leafy hamlet, quite picturesque in places. It is on a road, it's a B road, which leads up to eventually from Ewhurst and Cranley. And I noticed that a lot of the people supporting this application are actually in Cranley area. So there will be people coming even further than Rudgwick and Slinfold. So what we'll be having now is something that we don't want. It's not active travel at all. No, there's no pavement. There's no way of getting there other than by car. So we're going to be adding to the pollution we're trying to reduce. The other thing, of course, on biodiversity, I think we've got a biodiversity net loss here with the felling of many trees and, of course, the possible danger to ancient woodland. I heard what the applicant said about the drainage, etc. But that seems, there was no guarantee on that, and that seems to be a risk, and I don't think we can risk ancient woodland. So in my view, the planning balance, the harm outweighs the benefit. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendation for refusal.
Thank you very much. No. Thank you. I will now open this up for debate with the members. Councillor Vickers, are you? Yeah, sorry. Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chairman. I think the local members said everything that needs to be said. I cannot see any exceptional reason why we should go against the officer's recommendation. The significant harm this would cause to the ancient woodland, the lack of biodiversity net gain, I'm happy to support the officer's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member wishing to speak on this one? No? Oh, just at the last minute. Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chairman. I just want to add my voice actually to Councillor Vickers and Councillor Landio's comments. The UK is in a dire state actually for nature decline, ranks 228th out of 240. Irreplaceable woodland is irreplaceable. I do also have every sympathy for what sounds like a wonderful facility for families, but in this particular case, I think we have to respect HDC biodiversity and HDC arboricultural decisions on this. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Any final comments from members at all? Okay, before I go to the votes, then I just remind Councillor Landrew that you are not entitled to vote. I know. Yes, very advisable. I should have done that last meeting, shouldn't I? So the recommendation is to refuse a planning permission. All those supporting the recommendation, please show. Okay. Any against? Any abstentions?
One abstention.
Therefore, the planning application has been refused. Before you leave the chamber, I just got an announcement to make. The door to the car park remains open because there's an issue with the door, and believe it or not. So if you could just make sure that the car park door remains open. Thank you very much. Thank you. Moving on to item number 6. If you were here to speak at the previous application, then you can free to leave. Yeah, she's gone to get it. Thank you very much. Moving on to our item number 6, which is DC 24 1292, the Ridgeview Spinney Lane, West Chiltington. There was some confusion earlier. This application is in the Storrington and Sullington ward, and as such, Councillor Grech, you will not be voting on this one. Okay, please could the officer make the presentation?
Thank you, Chair. The application relates to a small parcel of land south of the dwelling Ridgeview, which lies within the built-up area boundary of West Chiltington Common, while the proposed kennels are situated outside of this boundary. The site is near various sensitive areas, including the Grade 2 listed building Perrotts to the south, the public right-of-way to the east, and ancient woodland at Perrotts Copse across Spinney Lane. It lies within a red zone for great crested newts and close to the West Chiltington Conservation Area boundary. The land also falls within a bat sustenance zone relevant to ecological considerations for the Men's and Ebino Common, which support bat species such as Barbastelle and Beckstein bats. Notably, the kennels would be in the parish of Storrington and Sullington, while the existing dwelling is within the parish of West Chiltington. Retrospective planning permission is sought for a change of use of the land, the removal of the existing dilapidated shelter, and the retention of a newly constructed dog kennel and associated works. The kennels are intended for the applicant's personal use, specifically to house up to 4 racing greyhounds. The new structure is a large timber outbuilding featuring internal divisions with each access to a small run, fenestration, approximately 2 metre high fencing, and a sink connected to the mains water. The elevations of the building are shown here, which includes additional visuals showing the fencing that has been erected. And again, here's the western elevation, again showing the fencing. The floor and roof plan of the kennels are shown on the slide here, which illustrates the internal layout of the building with the 4 kennels and runs with internal and external accesses. And the slide here illustrating the internal and externals of the building as built. As per section 7 of the committee report, officers recommend to members that the proposal is refused on the grounds that the use of the site is not essential to the countryside location, and that the resultant arrangement to the use in this location would appear at odds with the prevailing character of the area, therefore being contrary to policies 25, 26 and 33 of the Horsham District Council Planning Framework. Thank you.
Thank you very much. First public speaker, Paul Marchant, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Okay, good evening. I've kept greyhounds in Spinney Lane for over 20 years at Halcyon, Chestnuts and Ridgeview, all my previous houses, all without a single complaint to myself or the council. Now I'm in retirement, my dogs are my full-time hobby and they keep me fit and mentally healthy. The application seeks simply to replace a dilapidated timber structure with a similar shelter for our dogs. It was never our desire to apply for a change of use to residential. This was only included at the council officer's insistence. The suggestion that this extends residential curtilage is incorrect. There is no residential use, just a straightforward replacement kennel. Please note, these are my dogs, it's not a commercial business. I respectfully struggle to understand the officer's recommendation for refusal under policies 25, 26 and 33, particularly when considering approved application DC 180223 for our immediate neighbours. This application approved a change of use from agricultural to residential, allowing demolish of timber stables, which were actually my former kennels next door at Chestnuts, and a construction of an indoor swimming pool complex just 10 metres from our boundary. The swimming pool is a modern, substantial structure that stands in clear contrast to our modest timber kennels, under the same policy cited for our refusal. Policy 25 seeks to conserve the landscape character. Policy 26 requires developments to be essential to their countryside location. Policy 33 states development should reflect local character. It is inconceivable to see how our small timber kennels could be considered more out of character than the approved swimming pool complex. I should stress that we have an excellent relationship with our neighbours who are fully supportive of our application, and likewise we were pleased when our application was approved. My point is about inconsistency, and I would ask the committee to reflect on the inconsistencies applied to our application. We are not seeking special treatment, only the same fair considerations our immediate neighbours receive. The recommendation for refusal seems to be based on old policies that the council hasn't followed consistently. Given all the expert support and recent approvals of similar projects, these policies shouldn't block our application. While we note the parish council's objections, we were surprised to see that no declaration of interest from one member who has been a close, long-standing personal connection with our family for over 30 years, including our children attending school together. We raise this not to challenge their integrity, but to supply
Could you bring your point to a conclusion,
full
please?
transparency is
Excuse me,
maintained
sorry.
in decision-making process. I'm finished, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, thank you very much. Chris Marchant, please. You have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hello. Our application replaces an existing structure in the same location, maintains agricultural and leisure use, and has drawn no objections from any technical consultees. In fact, we've received support from Horsham District Council's landscape team, environmental health, arboriculture, ecology, Natural England, and the highways. Environmental health confirmed no concerns regarding neighbour amenity, noting that housing the dogs in this field actually places them further from neighbouring properties. In summary, this is a modest, respectful proposal that replaces an existing structure in the same footprint, has unanimous support from all technical experts, and aligns with both precedent and policy when fairly applied. I would like to address the concerns regarding the buffer zone and green gap. The council approved DC 210823 Badgers Wood, a 3-bay garage with office and gym just 120 metres away, and also approved DC 201953 La Chaumière, a replacement double garage just 50 metres away, and both are within the buffer zone and ancient woodland. Our previous timber structure stood in this location for 40 years within the buffer zone. The replacement doesn't alter the green gap, maintaining exactly the same position as accounted for in the 2018 Sullington and Storrington Neighbourhood Plan. Finally, I understand precedence is important in planning decisions for 3 key reasons. It ensures fair and consistent decision making. It maintains public confidence in the planning process. It provides clarity on how policies are applied in practice. When a similar application nearby, indeed immediately adjacent, has been approved under the same policy framework, it establishes a clear precedent that should guide this decision. In closing, we believe this is a modest, reasonable proposal that replaces an existing structure in the same location, has no impact on our neighbours, has received no objections from technical experts, and is consistent with approved developments in the area. We respectfully ask the committee to consider these points very carefully and base their decision on facts and without prejudiced, please. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Just to come back on a few points, officers do consider that this does constitute a change of use, a material change of use. The land, as shown on the screen, would have been either an agricultural use or an agricultural paddock of some form, which doesn't have a planning use. Therefore, extending this use into this field, which is again an agricultural, formerly was an agricultural field, would constitute a material change of use in planning terms. In terms of the application cited by the applicant regards to the 2018 permission, so fortunately you can actually see it here on this application, on this slide here. So the building in question is just... You can't see the cursor. No, you probably can't see the cursor, can you? Just where it says built up area, about there. Yeah. I'm actually I can get a little laser out, can't I? There we go. Yeah, so around here.
Oh, well done.
So the significant difference between this application here and the proposal before you today is that this site in particular is a more modest extension in outside of the built up area boundary, whereas obviously this is far more substantial. I mean, ultimately it's a matter of judgment, and in the 2018 planning application, obviously we considered that it was acceptable. Also given that the built up area boundary was further up here as well, so it would have been more within, confined within that area. As for the other cited applications, the DC 20-1953, upon a quick inspection, it appears to be entirely within the built up area boundary.
Thank you. Any members wishing to comment on this particular application? I would. Okay. Well, Councillor Livingston.
So this is a building with the same footprint and position, which replaces an existing building. This has probably had a similar use, and all we're worried about is the change of classification. I think we're wasting our time, really. I cannot see any real justification not to support this application. Thank you.
Just to be clear, members, whether or not you find this acceptable or not is obviously a decision for you. But in terms of the use of the land at the moment, it's got no lawful use for anything other than agricultural use. So whether a shelter was being used, there's no planning history for it to say it was being used for a particular use. So obviously in terms of the planning system, it's an agricultural use. So I think, whether you consider it acceptable or not, you need to consider it on that basis. Thank you.
Councillor van der Burg.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm sorry, I don't get this either. The swimming pool is outside of the boundary, whether or not it's 5 feet outside, 10 feet outside. It's just around the corner and it's outside of the boundary. Refusing this seems to me to be a little bit strange.
As I said, this for you members to make a decision. Obviously, it is a matter of judgment as to whether buildings which are not required to have a countryside location are acceptable or not. So it's not the case of one is, so one, it doesn't necessarily set a precedent just because one building is allowed outside of a built-up area boundary and therefore another one is. It is a matter of judgment for you members. Obviously, if you are considering it acceptable, that needs to be in accordance with our local plan, the Horsham District Planning Framework, and there needs to be policy support for that. So obviously, if members are minded to support the application, there does need to be a reason for approval, which is supported by policies in our framework, which is open for you to make, councillors, but obviously there has to be a planning assessment of that. Thank you.
Councillor Clark, yes.
I have a couple of questions. I'll keep this short because my voice isn't very strong. One, in paragraph 6.12, you're talking about essentially 5.45 meters wide by 10 meters long, so you're looking at 50 square meters. But this finger of land, looking at it, I can't get a sense of exactly where the kennels are in that finger of land. Is the first question. Okay. How do those two relate? And how much square footage are you talking in terms of land would have to be moved from agricultural to curtilage or whatever the term is, in terms of, I'm trying to get a sense of the scale, if you want, of it. I'm very sensitive to the argumentation that the green belt between Storrington and West Chiltington needs to be preserved, especially with the problems that we have with G&T sites in that belt and other things. But I'm just trying to get a sense of scale. So maybe you can help me on that.
I'm just looking at the application form. It should have the. No.
Whilst we're looking at it, any other members wish to comment? Yes, Councillor Trollope, sorry.
Thank you, Chair. Similar to the question that was asked in the previous application, what is the risk or what are the controls that we could place that this would not be sort of a bridge to a different use after this? I mean, I can kind of take a deep breath and accept that it's for dog kennels, but I wouldn't want to see that in 5, 10, 15 years time, suddenly we see a new house being built there on the basis that we had dog kennels. So if we could condition that in some way, I would be more comfortable supporting the applicant's request.
My colleague's just measuring the sites above us, Councillor Clark. In terms of your question, Councillor Trollope, obviously if members are minded to approve it, there are conditions that you can impose on it, such as you can impose a condition saying it must be for personal use only, for instance. So that's the kind of condition that you can impose, which would restrict the use, obviously, to what's being proposed. That's the obvious one I can think of. Obviously, if you've got any other suggestions, I can let you know whether that would meet the tests for a condition, but that would seem the obvious one to impose.
For me, I think the condition would be that this is only for the use of keeping animals or livestock, and that there would be no possibility of this being used as a justification for human habitation, i.e. a house built. If we can constrain it to this use, I'm prepared to support it. Otherwise, I would not be. And I'd be happy to put forward a motion for us to vote on to make that a condition of the application, the decision.
You wouldn't add a condition saying no residential use, because that use would require planning permission in its own right. So you would just restrict it to personal use for the keeping of dogs and for no commercial purpose or something along those lines. But obviously, if members were minded to support it, the suggestion would be to delegate it to approval subject to the resolution of conditions, because it wouldn't be reasonable to come up with probably conditions today. So I would suggest that would be delegated, would be my suggestion, councillors.
I would be happy to delegate it if we can delegate it in the fashion that we discussed and other members agree.
Come back to you in a moment, Councillor Trollope. Councillor Vickers, and
Thank you. I feel quite uncomfortable, Chairman. Thank you. I feel quite uncomfortable with agreeing to this application. Can the officers just clarify for me? It's a retrospective application in that the current use is not has not got permission. In other words, the housing of dogs in this location is it has not been agreed, and it's contrary to the position that was there before for agricultural purposes only. But the application is for a new building to replace what's there. Is that correct?
Yeah, so the building is there. So there is a current breach of planning control, which obviously the applicants are seeking to regularise by the submission of this planning application. This description of development, obviously, and the description of development is written by the applicant rather than the council. It obviously talks about a dilapidated shelter. As I said, we're not aware of any planning history related to that use of that shelter for keeping of dogs, etc., where it may have taken place, but there's no lawful use for it. And obviously that's what's now being applied for now is the building and the use as part of this current application.
But the new building, sorry, Chairman, if I can come back, but the building they're applying for is a completely new building, which is obviously to replace the dilapidated building.
Yes, that's correct, Councillor Vickers.
Thank you.
I will come to you in a moment, Councillor Mercer, but I think we have the answer for Councillor Clark.
Would you like it in square metres or acres? It's 395 square metres. That's what's the measurement showing of the red line within the green gap.
And where does the Chilt run in relationship to it? In other words, is it south of the Chilt or not? You could see you've got the line there, the River Chilt. If you look below built-up area, it's marked River Chilt. Does the Chilt run through the site or not? Is the question. It's a shame the local members aren't here, they can't talk about it, because that would be relevant as well as far as I'm concerned.
It doesn't appear to be an open watercourse.
Okay. Thank you. Councillor Mercer.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm kind of struggling with the consistency issue which the applicants have raised. I understand that one of the examples was within the built-up area, and that's kind of explains why development was allowed in that case. But in relation to the swimming pool development, which is outside the built-up area, as far as I understand it, and I'm just checking this is for my understanding, what exceptional circumstances were there to allow that don't apply in relation to this application? What out of policy, arrangements?
Councillor, I think it's just boils down to a matter of judgment, as we said previously. So at the time of the 2018 application being determined, it was considered that extension into the open countryside was considered acceptable, whereas the judgment in the case of this application is that it's not.
And forgive me if I come back, Chair, just to confirm that particular building, the swimming pool, is outside the built-up area?
Yes.
I have to say I'm finding this difficult in relation to the consistency point, and that's causing me some concern.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Trott.
Yeah, just quickly, Chair. I too am struggling with the consistency issue, but I just want to be absolutely crystal clear with this, because it's not been clear from what everybody said. The building is already built, if I'm right in thinking that, to the fullest extent with its runs and all the rest of it, and therefore any potential environmental damage, because it goes into the blanket TPO area, has already been done. I know, but am I just right in thinking that this is already built and it covered the same footprint as the old shack that was there beforehand? That's all.
Firstly, Councillor Shaw, whilst obviously the applicants have stated it replaced an existing structure, we don't actually have any details of that. But I'm not aware it was submitted as part of the planning application. But also, and I'm sure some of you would have heard me say this before, councillors, is the fact that it's already there is not a material planning consideration. So I'd be very mindful of that as part of your assessment. Clearly, it's helpful in the sense of you can see it, you can see what it looks like. But in terms of your planning assessment, it has no bearing on the fact that the building is already there. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you. Sorry, I did. Thank you.
number of members have said they would support it.
One of the things that's been discussed is an alternative motion to be following discussions about this and some concerns around inconsistency, etc., expressed by the members. So that other motion for this, do you have that following motion, Councillor Trott?
Yeah. Sorry. Yes, I could. I would.
Yeah.
Yes, please. Sorry, if I could have a few moments.
Yeah.
I,
No,
I,
the
I've never done
officer,
it before.
it's okay, sorry, the officer, because we mentioned about delegating.
Well,
Yes.
well, I think there needs to be a reason for, if you're to put forward a motion, Councillor Trollope, there needs to be a reason for approval. Obviously, as officers, we've listened to the debate. There does seem to be some support for the proposal, and you've advised that you would be prepared to put forward a motion. In those circumstances, I wonder if the chairman would allow a short break, Councillor Trollope, so you can consider that motion. Obviously, as officers, we can't write it for you, but we can assist with the planning wording of it.
I'm sure I have some colleagues who would be happy to help me.
Okay.
I mean, to be clear, my support for this application is contingent on there being a restriction on the use. Otherwise, I would not be prepared to support it. So
Okay, then we will take a short break. No one to leave the chamber, thank you. And we will continue to have the live stream. So if you could come up with your alternative motion, councillor, it will be considered. Thank you. I will allow 4 minutes to come up with this. Councillor Andrew.
Just a thing on procedure, really. If we do go down this route of delegation, will that be delegated to a local member, even if they're not a member of the planning committee?
If I may, Mr. Chairman, just to chip in on that, I did consult with 2 of the local members of West Chiltington on this application, not the third one, and two of the West Chiltington members agree with the officer's recommendation.
Thank you.
say the delegation.
Councillor Mercer, yes.
I just quickly want to clarify Councillor Clark's remarks when he talks about the local members. I understood this. This is in Councillor Gregg's ward.
It's in two.
Oh, sorry.
So the parish boundary comes across this line here. So the site, the dwelling is within West Chiltington, but this part of the site is within Storrington.
So it's across the ward boundary.
Yes.
Right.
Hey, Councillor Trollope, you
Thank
have
you.
an alternative motion.
That we have a recommendation to approve, subject to it being delegated to HDC planning officers, a restriction that this building only be used for personal use and not for any commercial use, as we do not consider the proposed use harmful to the countryside location.
Okay, do I have a seconder for that motion? Thank you. Sorry.
Can I just ask for some clarification, please? If this is going to be delegated to officers in consultation with local members to put additional conditions on there, will it come back if there's no agreement?
It's not going to be.
Well, so there's two things. One, the motion wasn't to add in consultation with local members, but I think the view is obviously we've moved away from a kind of ward member-led planning committee structure, and some of those local members, as we've heard, it's a cross ward application, are not here. You know, if members felt that members need to be involved in that process, my suggestion would be that is the chair and vice chair. But that it's not necessarily necessary in my view. Obviously, Councillor Trollope has explicitly said within the motion what condition he feels needs to be imposed on it. You know, so officers are perfectly fine to make that decision. But obviously, if you did want members involved, and as I said, my suggestion would be the chair and vice chair. Going back to Councillor Vickers' point about other conditions, I think it's useful to have that within there, Councillor Trollope, and other conditions as appropriate. We might want to remove permitted development rights, for instance. So I think it would be beneficial that we were able to consider whether other conditions are appropriate. Obviously, as you know, members, when applications are recommended for approval, there's often a number of conditions which are considered to be necessary, and we haven't had the time here today to fully consider that. Thank you.
Chairman, could a non-severance condition be included in that?
It's got to remain tied to the house.
Can we? Okay.
Well, those are normally legal agreements, really, because ultimately that's the only way you can tie it. But you know, but ultimately, I think what you're saying, Councillor Vickers, is should it be in conjunction with Ridgeview and not sold off separately? I think the only way you can genuinely secure that is through a legal agreement. I think it's providing it secure for personal use. My view is that would be sufficient. But again, that's your decision, members. Thank you.
Councillor Lambert, sorry.
Thank you, Chairman. So if we're going to limit the use, can it be solely for the use of animals, and can we remove the development rights?
I'm sorry, I had understood that we couldn't do that, which is why I have gone down the road of just saying that this is only for his personal use.
It's up to you, Chair, to handle it. But
All right, thank you. Councillor van der Burg.
Yeah, I think additional conditions as it would be good to build into it. And particularly in that case, I should think it should be done in consultation with the chair and the vice chair.
I'm happy to add that in.
If you add that in, and if you could please read it out again so that members are clear on what they're voting on.
An additional appropriate condition.
Yeah.
So additional appropriate conditions and in consultation with the chair and the vice chair.
Chair, would you afford me another 1 minute so that I can just come up?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chair. Yes.
Councillor Trott, would you kindly read out?
I feel like I'm going to law school here, but yes, very good. Okay, I'm going to try again. A recommendation to approve, subject to it being delegated to HDC planning officers in consultation with the chair and vice chair of the planning committee to approve additional conditions, appropriate conditions, and that this building only be used for personal and not any commercial use, as we do not consider the proposed use harmful to the countryside location.
Okay, thank you. Do I have a seconder for that slightly? Thank you, Councillor Trott. All those in favour of this alternative motion, please show.
Nine in favour.
Okay, all those against? Any abstentions? Therefore, the motion is carried. Thank you. Thank you very much. Apologies, I should have made that clear to you. It helps if you push the right button. I was pushing the other right hand button. I was just waking up a few members. Sorry, I didn't mention it. Item number 7, DC 24 0489 Chesil Avenue, Southwater. Please could the officer present the application to the committee?
Thank you, Chair. Just by way of verbal update to the committee, the officer's report at paragraph 6.20 refers to an appeal in the context of it not being in accordance with policy SNP 14 of the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan. However, the appeal, which is cited, is within the parish of Broadbeach, which is not subject to the Neighbourhood Plan policy. Notwithstanding this error, Both cited appeal and the present application before members tonight relate to the loss of garaging and parking on a new build estate. Thus, the conclusions of the inspector's report, as per the officer's report, remains to be considered relevant. The application relates to the dwelling 36 Chestnut Avenue, which is a 3-bedroom semi-detached house located within the built-up area of Southwater on the eastern edge of the village. Constructed with red brick, a tiled roof and white PVC windows and doors, the property features a small porch with a bay window and a garage to the side, fronted by a driveway. It faces Channels Avenues and backs on to other residential gardens. The dwelling forms part of the larger development approved under the application reference DC 140590. Permission is sought to convert the garage into a habitable space, creating a study and playroom. The proposal includes to replace the front garage door with a window and patio doors to the rear. The garage, measuring 3.3 metres by 6 metres, is large enough for a vehicle and would be retained, and parking would be retained on the existing driveway. The internal layouts of the proposal are illustrated here. The site is shown on the photograph here, highlighted in red. One parking space is shown to accommodate the needs of the site in addition to the garage. As can be seen, the wider development as a whole benefits from the use of unallocated visitor bays on the street opposite the building line. 2014 Reserved Matters application included a condition to maintain the use of the parking areas and garage for the purpose of parking in perpetuity to ensure that the development would be adequately served by the necessary parking demand in the area. And the slide here illustrates that the site was indeed within the wider approved Reserved Matters application, which is the plan reference in the condition on the previous slide. As per section 7 of the committee report, officers recommend to members that the application is refused on the grounds that the loss of the garage would result in on-street parking overspill, which would be detrimental to road users and the character of the area. Whilst the occupants of the dwelling do benefit from the aforementioned on-street visitors bays, these are not allocated spaces, thus the occupants would not be guaranteed on-street parking provision. Therefore, this cannot be relied upon as a long-term parking provision for the applicant, as per the officer's report. Though the applicant has submitted a parking stress survey, this has not been completed in accordance with the recognised method. As such, the granting of the consent would go against the provisions of Policy 14 of the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Invite the first public speaker, and that is Susie Buss, please. And you have 3 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening, members, and thank you for the opportunity to present our proposal for the conversion of our garage into a home office and a playroom, while maintaining the parking provision on the front garden. The ability to work remotely has become an essential part of professional life for my husband and I. As such, we are seeking approval to adapt our existing garage into a dedicated home office, allowing us to work efficiently whilst maintaining a separation between professional and personal spaces within our home, whilst also creating additional space for our children to use. Our garage has never been used for the parking of cars, and there's been no effect on the avenue or the surrounding roads, with no objection from our neighbours on the proposed works. We have one car, and that is parked on the driveway, which is going to remain the same going forward. We've used it for storage since we moved in over 6 years ago, and we'll be mitigating the loss of this storage, utilising the space we have to the side of the garage to install a shed. We've got about 13 metres square to the side of our garage behind our fence, just for clarity. This sees minimal external changes. The proposed adaptation will primarily involve internal modifications, ensuring the outward appearance of the property remains consistent with the surrounding neighbourhood, matching the window to that of the bay window in replacement of a garage door. Whilst the garage will no longer serve as a potential parking space, we're committed to retaining suitable parking provision on the front garden, ensuring there is no impact on the street congestion or local parking availability. The LHA also commented there's no known transport grounds to resist this application. Whilst we can just about get our car into the garage, it's not feasible to get our children out of the car once it is inside. It's been stated that the size of the garage at 6 by 3 metres is sufficient for an average sized car. But what is an average sized car for a family of 4 living in a 3-bedroom house? We've an Audi A4 estate. It is not a large car or a wide car. For context, our car is 1.8 metres wide and our garage from measured architect's plans internally is 2.9 metres, less than 3 metres stated as sufficient. There are no parking issues within Cheswell Avenue or the surrounding streets. We have parking restrictions already on the surrounding roads, multiple lay-by spaces and a car park within Broadacres. Working from home and being in the office is now required by both of our separate employers, with currently Dan set up in the kitchen and myself from the lounge. We have a 5-year-old in school and a baby, and this is incredibly difficult to manage. Commuting is part of our roles. We both use the public transport to do this, contributing to lower emissions and supporting broader environmental objectives. As we are not building but converting, we are looking at how we can adapt our home to future-proof our lives here in this community in the most sustainable way. We'd also welcome a planning condition requiring cycle storage, providing alternatives to a car. In summary, this modest and well thought out adaptation will provide a central space without causing disruption to the existing parking provision, whilst future-proofing our home for us and any future owners. Thank you for your time this evening.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair. Of course, officers are, we appreciate the applicant's need for the use as proposed here, but the parking policy and the policy SNP 14 in general, especially when considering the extent of new build development in Southwater, are there to protect and more basically there to consider the lifetime of the dwelling and not the current occupant's use. In addition, it may be worth just noting that there have been some applications within the immediate vicinity of the site which have recently been determined. There was an application at 11 Rapley Rise with DC 23-2305, which was refused on the same grounds of policy SNP 14. Similarly, there was another one down the road at 19 Shoebridge Way, which was actually approved for the conversion of the garage, though in this case it was considered that for a dwelling of that size, 2.7 parking spaces were considered sufficient, and the application would have gone down from 3 spaces to 2. I'll just point you to paragraph 6.11 of the report, which reads out the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan verbatim, and that application was approved based on SNP 14.1b, where it talks about the proposed solution should avoid car parking dominating the street scene, therefore the parking should be on the side rather than the front of the property. But it also goes on to say that it should be accommodated on site where possible. And in the case of the Shoebridge Way application, there wasn't considered to be an additional space for them to extend their driveway, which isn't the case with the application before you today.
Just to add, Chairman, in terms of the size of the garage, is the 3.6 metres is the county parking standard for the size of garages. So all new developments that provide garages are built to that standard. So, I'm sure there are some cars that won't fit in it, but ultimately that is the county parking standard across the whole county. So I think we need to be mindful. So if the suggestion is that cars don't fit in them, and what message that is in terms of the use of garages across the district. And in terms of the last example that my colleague said, they still did retain 2 parking spaces, and obviously that's not the proposal in this case. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffrey, the ward councillor, and you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm speaking before you in support of this application here tonight, which as a councillor is a refreshing change. I made a judgment to call in this application after reviewing the detail of the proposal and listening to the reasons for the application to convert the existing garage area into a practical space. This type of application is one of least contention and is supported in the submission of supporting comments in favour from neighbouring residents. Whilst I'm supportive of the council's position in general on ensuring adequate parking spaces when considering garage conversions, I'm of the opinion that in this particular instance, that this policy is being applied on a blanket basis without adequate consideration of the specifics surrounding the application. Whilst I also note an objection from Southwater Parish Council, and I do respect the neighbourhood plan, I do not believe that this application contravenes the respective neighbourhood plan policy by resulting in the loss of a parking space. The existing garage is not of a suitable size for modern day vehicles. It is clear for anyone to see that when the property was constructed, that the developer designed these garages with storage as its primary purpose, as can be evidenced by its dimensions. Whilst theoretically most modern family vehicles could just about fit into the garage space, this leaves little to no room to exit the vehicle, particularly when bulky items and children are brought into the equation, as is to be expected with a young family. I understand that as a local authority, regardless of the dimensions of a garage, it is standard practice to count any garage towards the total number of available parking spaces. In this case, I believe it to be impractical and therefore improper to be considered as a fully functional parking space as part of planning considerations. Policy 41 of the Horsham District Planning Framework states that although adequate parking and facilities must be provided within developments to meet the needs of users, if it is insisted that the existing garage be treated as a viable parking space, the same policy also states that the loss of an existing parking space is permissible where the need for a development overrides the loss of parking and where necessary measures are in place to mitigate against the impact. I would argue that this application meets that criteria, with the conversion of the garage required in order for the family to continue to reside in their current residence, ensuring of a practical home environment for the family's evolving needs. I would further argue that the impacts of the loss of the garage is sufficiently mitigated by the retention of the existing driveway, which is used as the primary parking space at present and will continue to do so if this application is approved. I think it is also pertinent to highlight that West Sussex Highways have submitted no objection to the application, citing that they do not believe the application would have an adverse impact on the highway. Taking all of the above into consideration, whilst I understand the position of officers in principle, I believe that current policies are being applied without the required nuance to take into account the unique considerations of this application. In particular, the fact that the existing garage is simply not suitable for parking, a need already catered for by the existing driveway, which will result in no loss of parking for the property, as there will be no change in the way residents park, irrespective of the outcome of this application. I hope the committee take these points into consideration, the challenges of family life, and the fact that this application will result in no change to current parking arrangements and grant permission this evening. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Just briefly, members, just to say, obviously, officers feel they've taken a consistent approach to the consideration of the loss of parking in a garage. It was restricted as parking as part of the original permission. That's not unusual, and obviously, it doesn't provide a replacement space. Obviously, this particular development in Southwater has the added support of the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan, which has a specific policy related to parking, which officers have considered in this instance. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Clark, and then I'll come to.
Thank you, Chairman. Specific question. In paragraph 6.23, you make the comment that the original application for the dwelling was made prior to the publication of the guidance today. What was the guidance in place at the time that this was built? So that's the first question. The second question I've got is, what you're effectively saying, I think, is that the neighbourhood plan policy, does that override any other policy, or is the neighbourhood plan policy in line with county highways? And the third question is, how up to date is the neighbourhood plan in Southwater?
So, as far as I'm aware, the neighbourhood plan is the most recent. Obviously, the county parking standards is not policy. So again, I would suggest that the neighbourhood plan policy trumps that, because it is a policy rather than guidance. My understanding is at the time, garages were counted as one whole space at the time that the condition was imposed. Now the county parking standards are that garages should usually be counted as half a space. But obviously you can't re-provide half a space, and it, you know, and at the time it was counted as one space. So that's the assessment. Thank you.
Councillor Blackburn.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand HDC's position that and I understand how important parking is and the loss of spaces for a whole community. But this garage is first of all not used for parking, and second of all, there isn't enough space in there to get children in and out comfortably. And so although the space is a regulation size, and I do get that, it actually isn't practically big enough. And I think that's actually where the flaw is in this. And so at the moment, I feel I can't support a refusal. Thank you.
Councillor Mercer, then I come to Councillor Vickers.
Thank you, Chair. I'm just asking questions about paragraph 626, where it says, commenting on the issue about parking, the application has not been amended to have the creation of additional parking by means of hard standing to the side of the existing off-street parking. Should I take from that the implication that if there were additional hard standing to be included in the proposal, that then that would actually mitigate the damage to existing parking spaces?
I think that conversation was had with the applicant before the submission, and obviously we've got the proposal before us. So obviously that wasn't something that was pursued. I think if there were further provision that would likely address the parking concerns, obviously you then need to consider impact on the character and appearance of the area, you know, loss of kind of garden space. But in terms of the parking point, then yes, it would, if additional space could be accommodated on the site, then yes, it would address that concern.
So if I may follow up, Chair, does that mean that would we be able to condition an approval to include additional hard standing as part of an approval?
My view is no, because that's not the proposal before you. And that was open to the applicant to submit that, and they were aware that was an option, because I understand a colleague did speak to them before they submitted the application.
Councillor Vickers, you had your hand.
Thank you, Chairman. I was going to ask the question about the size, the number of spaces that were allocated for garages, and I understand that it was one space and now it's half a space, and the officer's already answered that part. I know this area really well, and I know that actually on-street parking here is not an issue at this present time. There seems to be plenty of spaces for those cars that actually are resident in that particular street. So I have huge sympathy with the applicant, and I understand exactly why, as an individual family, they need more space. I have huge sympathy. The South Water Neighbourhood Plan does have that policy in place for that very reason, to protect on-street parking. But to go against the neighbourhood plan policy in this particular case seems slightly strange, in that we've had other sites in South Water where we've actually allowed conversions in places where there's even less car parking spaces in the street. So I have a slight issue with trying to be consistent here. I don't know whether the officer's got any comment to make about the specific site here, why that is so significantly difficult if there is no further car parking space provided to replace that garage.
Obviously this development was designed with a level of parking that was considered to meet the needs of the development. That includes the garages, that includes the visitor spaces along the road, and obviously if there is if garages are converted, then that will reduce the quantum of parking across the wider site and result in kind of indiscriminate, inconvenient parking. So I think there is a position there, and obviously there is a policy. You know, if you were to move away from the the neighbourhood plan policy, you would have to have a good reason to do so based on policy or MPPF, not just based on personal circumstances. Personal circumstances are seldom enough to warrant an approval. You know, there might be instances where disability or something like that might add some weight to an argument, but personal circumstances and desires are unlikely to justify a departure from policy. And going back to Councillor Blackburn's point around the size of the garage, again, that's the personal circumstances of the applicant and what they've experienced. But obviously, we've got an evidence document from the County Council in terms of their wider parking standards, and that's the size. And obviously, it's a relatively new build, so it wasn't built in the 70s where cars have significantly increased in size and they're often too small. It was built to modern standards. So I recognise the desire here, but we do have a policy conflict that we have to consider. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Knowles.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Councillor Trollope and to Landeroog. Councillor Landeroog.
Part of what I was going to ask was covered by Councillor Mercer, in that they and the officer's comment about the opportunity to extend the parking, that will remain. So if someone were to move into the property that needed an additional parking space, they would then be able to create one. Is that correct?
If you know, they could come in for a proposal to create an additional parking space if there's sufficient space within the front curtilage. Yes.
Oh yes, of course they would need permission, but I understood from what the officer said there is sufficient space for an additional car parking in the front there. Is that, did I understand you correctly?
Yeah, so we had, so as you'll see from the planning history of the site, this isn't the first application we've had. A previous application was refused and discussions were had where the potential of extending that hard standing was discussed, but obviously that wasn't taken forward in terms of the present application before you today, and instead they've submitted a parking stress study.
Thank you. Councillor Trollope.
Thank you. I'm a little bit uncomfortable with this, to be perfectly honest. I do have sympathy that yeah, they might have a garage that they don't use or they can't use for their car. I'm sort of in the same situation. My garage is mainly used for storage, but at the same time, I don't know. For me to convert it, it would be losing a car parking space. And I think the question to ask is, yeah, I'm sure the development can absorb 1 or 2 people converting, but could it absorb everybody converting? So the question I ask myself is, if everybody in this development with a garage, with potentially have some curtilage as well, were to suddenly put in an application next week, would there be a parking problem? And I think that's a standard that we need to follow. So in fact, I support the officers in this, and that I think it would set a precedent that we might not be able to bear in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Landeroog.
Thank you, Chair. I agree actually with Councillor Trollope on this. If you set a precedent for this, then you're going to open the floodgates for everybody else to do it. And we have in Rudgwick one particular road where we did allow this, and practically every house along there now has got an additional room and not a garage. The other thing, of course, is that not everybody's got one car, and whoever moves in to this house at some time in the future could have 2 or 3 cars. So losing the garage and the front parking area will affect the whole of that road, and that road could look very much like the road in Rudgwick that I'm thinking about, with a whole stream of cars all the way along the road. And obviously, I don't know how wide that road is, but once you get to that sort of situation, you start blocking off things like fire engines, dust carts, etc. So if you open the floodgates, you will eventually have this problem. So I would be supporting the officer's recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Livingston.
I'm sorry to disagree with some of our fellow members, I support the change to remove the garage. Now, Southwater is in a village with good public transport connections. If we're moving ahead, trying to get a better environmental position, we should be looking at reducing the number of cars. This is, the world has also changed. These houses were planned and built before the pandemic. We now have home working. I'm a home worker as well, which is quite a regular way of working. And why would they have more than one car? If one car is being used by one of the adults in this residence, they can walk up the road and catch a bus. And it's certainly good connections from Southwater into Horsham, from Horsham to London, to Gatwick, to the rest of the world if necessary. So why would they need to have more than one car? So I'm going to go against what the officers recommend. And I think we ought to set a precedent to try to reduce the number of cars using our roads.
Councillor Livingston, I just want to remind members the framework for decision making. So we have our decision framework, our policy basis, the National Planning Policy Framework, the Horsham District Planning Framework, and neighbourhood plans. So the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan is a made neighbourhood plan. It's gone through its consultation process and it's been made and formally adopted. So if I can just refer you to paragraph 6.11 of the officer's report, page 64, which sets out what policy SMP 14.1 says. And it sets out there the level of parking spaces to be provided. So I think we just need to be mindful of the policy context in which we are making decisions. I'm not aware of a policy that says, specifically says we should be kind of reducing, the cars or this policy carries less weight, because this is the most up-to-date policy. And whilst I recognise what you're saying, Councillor Livingstone, we just have to be mindful of the policies we have to consider as part of our decision making. And I think, that's my concern. If you consider a departure from that policy is justified and you have grounds in which that justifies that's fine. But obviously, that would be a departure from the Southwater Neighbourhood Plan. Thank you.
Councillor Trollope.
Sorry, just to answer to Councillor Livingstone's argument, I think that restricting a car won't suddenly have, not having a garage won't suddenly make a family decide not to buy that extra car when they need it, and they'll just park it wherever. And also, I'm not absolutely certain that Southwater has that good of public transport links. Certainly not a reason enough that would allow for the construction of a garage conversion. I just don't see it. I just don't see there being a reason to break the precedent. And again, I support the officers in their recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Vanderburg.
Just a quick question. There has been a modification because we now talk about a garage being half a space, not a whole space. So things have changed a little bit. The question I have is, if you had counted the garage as half a space, is there 1.5 spaces on the curtilage that would take you to 2?
I think it is not to be taken literal, the half a space. When you're dealing with that, you're dealing with a wider development, and therefore you're counting the number of dwellings and the number of spaces overall and the number of visitor spaces. So I think the purpose of the half a space wasn't so you're providing half a space on each curtilage, because obviously that's illogical, and therefore the reprovision of half a space is illogical. The purpose was to look at it as a whole, and that goes back to some of the points around what you consider around the wider estate and the level of garages on the site. Thank you.
One final comment, Councillor Livingston.
Just one confirmation. I've got a picture of the location, and the houses next to it don't seem to have any garage at all, but only one parking space. Do they have a similar number of occupants to the residents in question?
we wouldn't have that information with us, Councillor Livingstone, but having been involved with this application way back when, in those times, you know, the level of parking is appropriate to the scale of the dwelling. So I don't know what size they are without actually going back to the original plans. But, you know, you have on-site parking spaces appropriate to the size of the dwelling at the time. And then there's a level of visitor spaces across the wider site to serve the visitors to the site. Thank you.
Thank you. I now consider that we've sufficiently concluded discussion on this, and I am going to move to the vote and remind Councillor Blackburn that you will not be voting on this item. The recommendation is to refuse planning permission. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show.
Eight.
All those against?
5 against.
Any abstentions?
1 abstention.
Vote is carried. Therefore, the recommendation is carried and planning permission is being refused. Thank you. Moving on to agenda item number 8, which is land south of Mount Farm, the Mount Ifield. Please could the officer make the presentation of the application to committee. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. The application site is situated on the western side of the mount and accessed via a private track from Rusper Road. Located in a rural countryside setting outside the built-up area, the site comprises agricultural fields, a pond to the southeast, woodlands to the south, and tree-lined boundaries to the west. Existing structures include a stable block and a portable field shelter along the eastern edge. The surrounding area is predominantly open countryside with scattered residential properties. The proposal seeks planning permission for the construction of a private agricultural barn and sand school. The barn would measure 16 by 10 metres with a ridge height of 4.75 metres, featuring a dual pitched roof, 2 roller shutter doors, and a pedestrian entrance onto the north elevation. It would have a concrete base and be finished in a steel profile cladding. The elevations of the proposed barn are shown here, which would be sited along the eastern boundary of the site. The barn is not considered to appear out of the ordinary within a countryside location. The floor plans here, again, just illustrating that the barn would be used for the storage of agricultural equipment. The proposed sand school would measure 40 by 20 metres and would be fenced around its perimeter with a sand and fibre base and drainage channels. 8 lights would be installed around the boundary facing in. Condition 7 of the committee report stipulates that these shall be so they shall not operate for more than 1 hour between 3 PM and 9 PM between October and March. As per section 7 of the committee report, office recommends to members that the application is approved in accordance with the detailed conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We have no public speakers for this particular item, so I open it up to members for debate. Thank you. Any members wishing to comment on this application? Councillor Knowles, yes.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. I know the parish council asked that the lighting is restricted to 1 hour a day. Is that something that has been conditioned or has been considered?
Yeah, so that's detailed within section condition 7 of the report.
Any other comments members wish to make? No? Okay, in that case I will move to the vote. And the vote is that the recommendation is to approve planning permission subject to the appropriate conditions as noted in the committee report. All those in favour of the recommendation, please show. Looks unanimous to me.
Yep, that's unanimous.
Okay. No abstentions? No. Good. Okay, thank you very much. Therefore, the application has been approved. No urgent business from me, but I'd like to thank the officers and members for their contributions this evening and wish you all a safe journey home. And at 20:30, I bring the planning committee to a close. Thank you very much.